It's Monday, May 11th. In the headlines, Senate passes National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority bill. Government exploring Jamaica's pension and insurance funds for infrastructure investments. In business news, Amber Group launches AI call center platform. Regionally, Barbados to become European Union's Caribbean Partnership Hub. And in sports, Sunshine Girls seeking urgent sponsorship for fitness coach ahead of Commonwealth Games. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority (NARA) bill was given the nod in Senate on Friday after intense debate between government and opposition senators. The NARA bill aims to establish a central authority to accelerate post-Hurricane Melissa reconstruction. Hurricane Melissa slammed into western Jamaica, leaving massive destruction, with rebuilding expected to cost billions of dollars. Restoration began almost immediately, but Government Senator Keith Duncan says the government cannot foot the bill alone, and investors are standing by.
There are projects sitting on the files of JAMPRO, the DBJ, and on the desks of private sector executives across this country, projects that have been held up, but not by a lack of capital or a lack of will, but by the bureaucratic maze that this bill is designed to dismantle.
Opposition Senator Maziki Thame is not convinced.
The use of our own money and loans being taken on our behalf is not as extraordinary as the minister suggests, and the spend of these sums requires, most critically, public oversight.
Opposition senators argued that the bill still grants sweeping powers without sufficient safeguards and proposed several amendments aimed at strengthening accountability. But government members were not deterred.
Given the pressing need to get the objectives of NARA cemented, Mr. President, I put it to you that the endless search for the perfect rendition of the NARA bill must not become the enemy of speed and urgency needed to establish and implement NARA in order, why are we doing it? In order to build a much more resilient Jamaica into the future.
In the end, the bill was passed through government majority.
An act to make provision for the management and implementation of the post-disaster reconstruction and resilience efforts consequent on the passage of Hurricane Melissa, and for resilience generally, to establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, and for connected matters read a third time and passed.
The government is exploring Jamaica's pension and insurance funds as a possible source of financing for reconstruction efforts following Hurricane Melissa. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says recent reforms will give pension funds and insurance companies greater flexibility to invest in infrastructure and other long-term development projects. Speaking at the Pension Association of Jamaica's annual luncheon last week, Dr. Holness stressed that the aim is to not force pension funds into national projects, but to create commercially viable investments that can responsibly attract pension capital.
The government has signaled a measured expansion of the investment limits for pension funds, including the phased increase in the share of assets that may be invested in private companies, as well as greater flexibility for foreign currency exposure for pension funds and insurance companies.
The reforms, announced earlier by Finance Minister Favour Williams, include phased increases in investment limits for private companies and expanded foreign currency exposure. The government says Jamaica cannot finance recovery costs from Hurricane Melissa alone. The preliminary World Bank assessment estimated physical damage from the storm at $8.8 billion.
We will use climate and resilience financing. We will use public-private partnerships. But we must also mobilize Jamaica's own savings. The long-term capital held in pension funds and insurance companies to help finance the infrastructure backbone of national reconstruction.
However, he warns that pension savings must remain protected through strong governance, transparency, and prudent investment management. As Jamaica observes Child Month this May, the Ministry of Health and Wellness is renewing calls for greater attention to children's mental well-being. Health officials say growing social and environmental pressures are increasing the risk of mental health challenges among young people, making early intervention and strong support systems more important than ever. More in this report from Denita Rodney.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness says protecting the mental health of children and adolescents must remain a national priority. Speaking at the National Child Month church service in Kingston, Mental Health Coordinator Nurse Carol Baker-Burke warns that many mental illnesses begin early in life but often go untreated for years.
The World Health Organization Child and Adolescent Mental Health Fact Sheet 2017 indicates that up to 50% of mental illnesses emerge at age 14, though it takes up to 10 years for some of them to be diagnosed. Untreated mental disorders may lead to students exhibiting current and long-term difficulties in performance at school, home, and in their communities, resulting in poor academic, social, and vocational achievement.
Data shows recent crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic and hurricanes, along with abuse, violence, and unstable home environments, have increased mental health risk for children. However, the health representative says strong family and community support can help young people build resilience and thrive.
Children at lower risk of mental health problems and/or disorders are usually part of families, as was mentioned before, who create safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and consistent family care and support.
Mrs. Baker-Burke adds that the ministry continues to expand programs aimed at improving mental health awareness and support systems in schools and communities.
Mental health services are a priority area for the Ministry of Health. Our policies, plans, programs, and publications aim to provide a framework and guidance for improvement of mental health services across the regions. Mental health education is vital to empowering our children to take care of self and others.
The Health Ministry is encouraging families, educators, and community leaders to work together to create safer and more supportive spaces for children across the island. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I am Denita Rodney.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Welcome to today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing you the developments shaping markets, capital access, and business decision-making across Jamaica and the region. Let's get into the stories that matter. Amber Group has launched Amber Nexus AI, a voice AI platform that enables any business to deploy a fully functional AI-powered call center in days, given configuration prerequisites. The AI agents sound completely human, and they take inbound calls or make outbound calls on a Jamaican number. They can also be configured to sit on websites and mobile apps. AI agents can be configured to handle key business operations. They can book appointments, chase collections, answer detailed product questions, and other operations, plus they transfer to live agents. In terms of cost, A human-handled call costs US $7 to US $12 fully loaded. A voice AI handles the same call for US 30 cents to US 50 cents. A 90+% collapse in cost with no drop in service quality. Nexus is not built to replace Jamaica's contact center workforce. AI handles the routine. Humans handle the moments that matter. Nexus is built on that hybrid model. NCB Group's unaudited financial results for Q2 2026 reported a consolidated net profit of $10.3 billion for the 6 months ended March 31, 2026, a 53% or $11.9 billion fall off from the $27.2 billion reported in the previous year. Net profit attributable to stockholders came in at $7.2 billion, 46% or $6.1 billion lower than the $13.3 billion recorded for the same period last year. Speaking about NCB stock at a recent investor briefing, CEO of Mayberry Group, Gary Peart, pointed out, NCB is the largest commercial bank in the country and is the most profitable institution. Yes, it had a shareholder issue where that shareholder had to sell some NCB shares and the market got into a tizzy. But no one is focused on the underlying asset, which is the bank. End Gary Peart's quote. Peart maintains that listed shares remain the asset class that will explode in value in the coming months, particularly if the war in Iran is declared to be over sometime next month. I quote, "At Mayberry Jamaican Equities, that's where our best bet is, because when equities do explode, you won't be able to get any shares." End quote. For the trading period of May 8, 2026, the most actively traded securities were Trans-Jamaica Highway Limited US dollar shares with 13,395,996 units, or 50.12% of market sales activities. Ken Tire Holdings Jamaica Limited with 3,158,618 units, representing 11.82% of market sales activities. Trans-Jamaica Highway Limited Jamaican dollar shares with 1,632,546 units, representing 6.11% of market sales activities. Investor activity remained concentrated in transportation and distribution plays, signaling continued interest in dividend-producing and strategic assets. Turning to the foreign exchange market based on Bank of Jamaica data for May 8, 2026. Forex traders recorded significant activity with strong demand across major currencies. For the US dollar, trading margins reflected steady liquidity, with the US selling at $157.13 and buying at $158.93. For the Canadian dollar, moderate gains supported by $6.08 transaction spreads. The Canadian dollar sold for $117.81 and was bought for $111.73. For the British pound, continued volatility offered short-term trading opportunities of $9.22 in profits for the banks. The British pound sold for $218.62 and was bought for $209.40. These movements underscore the importance of cash flow timing and currency awareness for businesses managing import costs, debt servicing, or overseas exposure. For our credit report tip of the day, most people think of a credit report as something tied only to debt, loans, or financial emergencies. In reality, your credit profile quietly shapes the quality, flexibility, and freedom of your lifestyle, especially if travel is part of your long-term vision. Career planning teaches us how to earn. Credit planning determines how smoothly we can get through opportunities. A strong credit report can become one of the most practical tools for building a travel lifestyle that complements your career instead of competing with it. And that's today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing clarity to capital, markets, and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay intentional, and keep building forward. See you soon.
In regional news, the European Union's office in Barbados is set to take on an expanded regional role from September. EU Ambassador to Barbados and Ambassador Designate to the Eastern Caribbean, Her Excellency Fiona Ramsey, says Barbados' delegation will become a hub for managing EU partnerships across the Caribbean. She made the announcement during the annual Europe Day reception, which also marked 50 years since the establishment of the EU office in Barbados.
In practical terms, this will mean a significant reinforcement of staff here in Bridgetown, and therefore an expansion of the EU presence, ensuring that the European Union remains a reliable partner in the region and for Barbados. Ladies and gentlemen, here's to a future of partnerships in action, and a future where countries, large and small, live in peace, stability, and dignity.
Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Minister Kerry Simmons, says Barbados stands to benefit from stronger cooperation with the European Union and its members.
I want to say that, for example, with regard to innovation and inclusivity, or in areas of green financing and being able to deepen the collaboration, we rely heavily on the European Union for partnership. Equally, as this little island and other little islands of the Caribbean seek to chart our own course, we do so in a world where artificial intelligence is a defining feature of what the future of our countries is going to look like. And again, we look to the European Union for partnership in that regard.
Guyana has strongly pushed back against Venezuela's latest arguments before the International Court of Justice, accusing Caracas of trying to rewrite history in its decades-old border dispute. Lead counsel for Guyana, Paul Reichler, told the court Venezuela is using what he called a, quote, false and self-serving, end quote, narrative to challenge the 1899 arbitral award, which established the boundary between the two countries more than 125 years ago.
In a forceful submission before the World Court, Attorney at Law Paul Reichler said that Venezuela is attempting to portray itself as a victim of colonial injustice, while casting Guyana as the beneficiary of British imperial expansion. He rejected that narrative, arguing that the historical record shows the opposite. According to him, Venezuela's case is built around a story that claims the country was forced into the 1897 arbitration agreement, made to accept an unjust 1899 arbitral award, and then kept silent for decades by fear and ignorance.
All the myths unravel when confronted by the evidence. The contemporaneous documentary evidence, which Venezuela so conspicuously and conveniently ignored on Wednesday.
Reichler said that Venezuela has now used that narrative to justify its attempt to claim more than 70% of Guyana's territory, while presenting itself as a champion of decolonization.
They had a chance to submit contemporaneous evidence of their own. They did not. The evidence we presented on Monday, not by mere assertion or by footnote, but by physical documentation.
By contrast, Reichler said that the documentary record points to continuous Dutch and later British occupation in the territory. He referred to the maps and historical records showing Dutch settlements extending from the Essequibo towards the Orinoco, including areas that still carry Dutch place names.
There is no evidence in the record of this case that Venezuela or Spain before it ever occupied any part of it. Venezuela has presented none in this case.
He maintained that Guyana's case rests on documentary proof, while Venezuela has relied on unsupported assertions. Right's submission formed part of Ghana's response to Venezuela's challenge to the validity of the 1899 arbitral award, which fixed the boundary between Ghana and Venezuela. Antonio De reporting for the AGP Nightly News.
India's External Affairs Minister says direct flights between India and Trinidad and Tobago remain a priority, but global aircraft shortages are slowing efforts to launch new routes. Speaking during a reception in Trinidad, the minister also pledged a stronger Indian presence across the Caribbean and Latin America, while reaffirming India's commitment to deepening development, business, and cultural ties with the region.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar says direct flights between India and Trinidad and Tobago are needed, but global aircraft shortages are delaying new routes. He also promised a more active Indian presence in the Caribbean and Latin America, while stressing that India intends to remain accountable for promises made to the region. Here's more.
If anybody wants to see a direct flight, it's me. You know how hard it was to get flights coming in here?
Calls for direct air links between India and Trinidad and Tobago featured prominently during a reception at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Cultural Cooperation on Saturday evening. India's Minister of External Affairs Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar acknowledged the growing demand, but noted that the delay is not diplomatic, but logistical.
Some of it is the particular airlines need to grow. There's actually, at least where India is concerned, our two main airlines have ordered more than 1,000 aircraft. Problem is there's a shortage in the manufacture of aircraft. So there's a long waiting period.
Despite the challenges, he expressed optimism that direct routes to the Caribbean will eventually materialize.
The desire in India to see the world that there would be a case for flights coming into the Caribbean. It is, in terms of distance, quite possible. People fly much longer flights than that. So I'm also hopeful that would happen. I do recognize it's a problem today and can sometimes be an inconvenience. So let's hope that those planes are delivered as quickly as we hope they will be.
Addressing questions about India's increased presence in the region, Dr. Jaishankar said the expansion reflects India's growing global footprint.
It's something which has been building for some time. I would say, had it not been maybe for the COVID, it would have happened perhaps even a few years earlier. And part of it is India's greater capabilities, India's greater reach. As I said, we do about $40 billion of business every year in Latin America and Caribbean. If you look at this whole region, you will see more Indian businesses.
The minister also revealed that discussions with Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar and Cabinet focused on practical ways to deepen cooperation, including India's willingness to provide financial support.
The first significant point of our discussion was the sense that we could, using soft loans from India, look at the possibility of infrastructure projects, development projects. Some big, some perhaps less so, which would really contribute to livelihoods, contribute to ease of living in this country, contribute to the quality of life.
Dr. Jaishankar assured that India will continue working closely with TNT on development initiatives, digital cooperation and cultural exchange as relations between the two countries continue to deepen. Sonolala, TTT News.
In sports, the Sunshine Girls are urgently seeking sponsorship to secure a strength and conditioning coach ahead of this year's Commonwealth Games in Glasgow from July 23 to August 2. Jamaica's national netball head coach, Sasha Gay Henry Wright, describes the absence of a fitness trainer due to financial constraints as a major concern, stressing that the players' physical condition will be critical to the team's success at the championships. She says the coaching staff is hoping for external support to help cover the cost of a strength and conditioning coach during the team's preparation period. The Sunshine Girls are currently training, with several players also competing in Netball Jamaica's divisional leagues and the upcoming Elite League, as part of preparations for the Commonwealth Games. And that's the news on PBC Jamaica. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBC Jamaica. Thank you so much for watching.